If you've paper traded or tested your methodology to the point where you have confidence that you have something that can generate consistent results, then you can do this exercise. If you haven't, then you're going to have to do that first. You're going to have to plan your trades. In other words, you're going to have to take your methodology and determine a given set of rigid variables, because what we're going to do is set up a trading exercise with just a simple 25 trade or 20 trade sample size. In other words, what you're going to say is that I am willing to invest in the development of these skills, the skill of learning to trade without fear, learning to think in probabilities, because when you learn to think in probabilities, the fear will go away. And so what I essentially have to do is convince myself. I have to purposefully step into an experience where I am convinced, where I literally convince myself that these principles are true. Now, they sound true to you. They might resonate as the truth, but you have to keep in mind that you might have a backlog of any number of experiences that would support beliefs that would argue otherwise. Because I could say to you that if I set up or you set up an exercise where you said, okay, I've got a particular set of variables that when they appear in the market, that is my edge, and that my edge will produce, let's say, even 60% winning trades, and you don't even have to have 60%. You can have 50% and still make consistent money, as long as what you have to risk to find out if it works is, a third or a half of what you normally get when the trade does work in terms of profits. But if we set this exercise up so that there's no wiggle room, there is no wiggle room. What I mean by wiggle room is that the variables, the criteria that you use are absolutely rigid, black and white. They're either present or they are not. That's the only decision you have to make. In other words, if you do it in terms of lights, whatever lights you're going to use, whatever time frame, the lights you're going to use in whatever time frame, they are either on or they're not. And if they're on, you are obligated to take the trade. And what you're going to say to yourself is that in this, whatever criteria or plan that you set up is, I am not going to take just the next trade. I am going to take the next 20 trades. You are committing yourself to taking the next 20 trades of the occurrence of your edge. You will know in advance, based on testing and paper trading, exactly the optimum amount that you have to risk. In other words, what your risk is on each trade, and it's not going to be a varied amount. It's going to be a specific amount, whether it's in terms of dollars or distance. It will be a specific amount so that you know exactly how much each trade is going to potentially could cost you. And it should really be set up as a rigid profit potential too. In other words, I don't want you making subjective decisions as to about how far you're going to let the market go in your favor. So if you can get a set of variables, well, let's say you even 2 to 1 or even 1.5 to 1, 1.5 to 1, meaning that if I have to risk 1 point of something, even if it's, let's say in stocks, if I have to risk $1 to make that my particular set of variables, my entry variables, will get me into a trade where if I risk $1, I'll get $2 60% of the time or 50% of the time. Then that's what you do. You do 2 to 1. There are trading methodologies that can be even the opposite. You can even go 2 to 1 here, meaning you can risk 2 to get 1. But in these cases, the trade has to be 80 or 90% correct. You can do it any percentages you want as long as it is fixed. There is no wiggle room. There is no subjective decision-making whatsoever. Am I really clear about this? There is no subjective decision-making whatsoever. Go ahead.
The big things in expectancy or in trading with risk-reward ratio is you don't know which trade is going to be the winning trade.
Correct.
And typically you try to let your winning trade, you get stopped out on your winning trades. But what you're saying to us for this exercise is that we take a fixed stop. I understand the fixed risk, but a fixed, essential profit stop.
You know what? If you can set it up as a trailing stop, if you can set your trailing stops up where you're not making any kind of subjective decision, you can do that too.
So it doesn't matter as long as it's defined.
If you're sophisticated enough to do that, then yes. Okay. Most traders in these situations are not. That's why I make it real easy. Okay. As long as you're not making any decisions. So in other words, what you're saying is that if the market goes X number of points in my favor, I move my trailing stop up to a certain percentage below where the market is right now. And you don't move that unless you get stopped out or it moves up another gradient or whatever. Another, what am I thinking? Standard like deviation beyond.
Whatever.
Yeah, okay, whatever you're using, okay? Yeah, if you can do that, that's fine. I just want all the variables to be completely and absolutely fixed. Okay? And then you fixed all these variables, and so you say to yourself, I'm going to take the next 20 trades. Not just the next one, but the next 20. No matter what. No matter what. Now that means that you have to be prepared based on the amount that you have to risk. You have to be prepared to take 20 losses in a row. The likelihood of that happening is about as remote as getting 20 wins in a row. But the point is that the dollar value of the risk of each trade multiplied by 20, you have to be able to afford. So you've got to set it up that way. You've got to set it up so that you can afford the dollar value of the risk of taking 20 losing trades in a row. Because what you're saying to yourself, if taking the risk, if taking the 20 trades in a row, losing 20 trades in a row based on the amount of shares that you trade. So for an example, if the standard amount of shares that you trade would say that, if I had lost 20 trades in a row based on how much I've got to risk, it's going to be $5,000. You say to yourself, you know what, I don't want to spend $5,000 on this. Then don't. But say I'm truly willing to spend, let's say $1,000. Then set it up where the amount of contracts or shares that you trade correspond to adding each one up where it comes up to $1,000. Even if it means just trading 10 shares at a time. Go down to a level where you're completely comfortable with the dollar value. You have to be completely comfortable. And then, when you get an occurrence of your edge, put the trade on and see what happens. And if it turns out to be a winner, you think, oh, hey, yeah, Mark Douglas, hey, good, hey, this is all right, okay? Yeah. So this one turns out to be a winner, and maybe this one turns out to be a winner. And maybe, well, this one's a loser. You think, okay, I can handle that. And this one's a loser? Uh-oh, and this one's a loser. Now we've got 3 losers in a row. I have rarely met a trader who doesn't have a problem with the next trade after 3 losers in a row. You made the commitment to take every single trade. When the next one comes up and your mind is screaming, no, it's a loser. Remember how our minds are wired to think? Our minds are wired to think that way, but that is not the truth. The truth is, your methodology, the mathematical formula, does not know what the outcome of that trade is going to be. And neither do you. You got to take it anyway. And see, and when these occurrences, when you purposefully put yourself into a situation where you're confronting these conflicting beliefs, Because that's what's rearing its head. This is any different than me saying, I want to go run, and then after that program, or it's too cold, it's too hot, it's raining, whatever. It's the exact same thing. You put the trade on anyway, and it turns out to be a winner, you are convincing yourself that you don't know what's going to happen next. Because you created an experience that directly contradicts what you thought was true. You actually created an experience that directly contradicts what you thought was true. And the more of these you run into, and the more times you do it, all of a sudden, you're not thinking the old way anymore. You are truly and genuinely learning how to think in probabilities. You are integrating thinking in probabilities as a core part of your trading personality. You may understand the nature of probabilities, but now you're being able to function from a probabilistic perspective. Because what you're going to do is you're going to do this exercise until you can do it flawlessly. You are going to do this exercise, and you do the first one, and if you don't execute your trades completely flawlessly, then do it again. Now, at the end of a sample size, if you don't like the outcome, if you don't like the results, meaning the amount of money that you made, or even lost for that matter, because that's possible, you don't like the bottom line, you can tweak your variables. You just can't do it in the middle of a sample size. If you want to change your variables at the end of a sample size, you're free to do it. You cannot do it in the middle of one. Cannot. Absolutely cannot. You will keep doing this exercise until when? What? What?
Until you're consistent.
Well, yes, but there's something else I want to get. Until when? How do you know you've arrived? How do you know you've actually arrived, that you've changed?
That you can freely and easily put in the trade.
That's right. You can there's no conflicting energy anymore. It doesn't occur to you to not do it. It doesn't even enter your brain. You don't even get the thought. You get a signal, you put on the trade. You get a signal, you put on the trade. It's like then it's who you are. You guys with me on this? You managed to actually work through all that conflicting energy, and you've changed. You're a different person. Because the competing and conflicting thoughts don't even enter your consciousness. They're not there anymore. Because it's not who you are anymore. Any questions about this? Is this making sense to everybody? If you're really sincere about wanting to generate a consistent income, you'll do this exercise. And if you're not, you won't. And you might not be ready to, and that's all right. Whenever you're ready, you'll do it. But this will work. This will work. 1 second. Because you are actively stepping into an experience where your desire is to change the way that you think. Instead of avoiding the confrontation, you are actually embracing the confrontation. Big difference. You are embracing the confrontation. Because the more that you embrace it, the faster it dissipates.